Here we go. All right, good evening and welcome. I'm Mark Pinto here at Phoenixville Public Library. We have a provocative topic for you folks tonight, and that is contemporary art activism, which is what happens when an artist uses his or her art to shed light on social or political issues of our time. And to give us a better understanding and appreciation of this idea by looking at the work of five well-known artists, we're glad to have with us tonight Ellen Nelson, Senior Master of the Arts at Pottstown's The Hill School, and an artist in her own right. So Ellen, welcome. Take it away.
Well, thanks so much, Mark. I'll go ahead and start my share, and hopefully you all can see the title page. I'm just going to hit this thing there just to clear out extra stuff. Okay, so art activism now. Thank you so much for coming. I've been interested in how art can be used to help improve the world for a number of years. It wasn't until recently that I discovered that there is a term for that, art activism. In many ways, art activism is not new. For centuries, artists have been using art to shed light on injustice, oppression, violence, and social disparities. For a long time, artists have stood up for the voiceless and marginalized. The magical thing about art is it can challenge traditional boundaries, hierarchies, and rules imposed by those in power, because art doesn't have rules or laws. It's the one thing that is perfectly free. As soon as people put boundaries on it, it moves and shifts to avoid those constraints. Protest art has always challenged the status quo and made the public rethink assumptions. Artists have often played the part of the canary in the coal mine, often being one of the first groups of people to sound the alarm when society gets imbalanced. Images speak louder than words, so art is often the perfect medium for bringing issues to the public eye. What is new is the way in which some contemporary artists approach their art. It is just that in the 21st century, artists have so much more at their access besides paint and canvas. Using art as a means for positive change is hugely important, as it can shift the thinking of the general public, as well as the thinking of leaders and politicians. So let's first define what we mean by art activism. Art activism is the action of promoting positive change through art. Art and activism provide a powerful combination to connect an idea with the viewers. It utilizes the effective strategies of activism while adding the additional emotional impact of an art image. Art activism is usually accompanied by doing something. Therefore, the art tends to be an action. And I consider myself to be an art activist. In 2018, I worked with Naomi Natale to create 1 Million Bones, an art installation that involved the creation and the laying down of 1 million bones at the mall in Washington, DC. This example of art activism was designed to raise awareness for contemporary genocide. The bones created a symbolic mass grave and a collective protest against ongoing genocides and mass atrocities in places like the Democratic Republic of Congo, Sudan and South Sudan, Burma, and Somalia. As a regional supplement to the 1 Million Bones project, Nancy Szigeti, another artist, and I created a smaller scale installation at the Goggle Works in Reading, PA, to support the movement. We wanted to create a message of hope by using the shadow of the bones to create an image of a bird taking flight, similar to a rising phoenix. So why art activism? Why not just activism? Art is the perfect vehicle for positive change in the 21st century. Images speak louder than words. Art can make a message accessible and universal. We in the 21st century are powerfully equipped with technology to help a message be heard by a multitude of people. That is why movements like the Arab Spring and the Black Lives Matter has been able to engage so many people through the power of social media and phone cameras. The addition of art often activates an emotional connection to a cause or an issue, ushering in change more readily than without the art. Art activism is an example of creative problem solving. These strategies can be extrapolated to other sectors of the society. Art activism can be energizing because of its openness and inclusivity. It tends to continue to spawn more ideas and projects. This was a project that students from both the Pottstown High School and the Hill School students worked on. It's a mural commemorating the past and the present of Pottstown. Murals can bring people together. They can also help beautify a space. Here the mural is being installed. And here is the mural in its final location. Here's another art activism project I was involved with. This mural was installed on the side of a privately owned home. The house's wall overlooked a community garden. To help increase a sense of community and enhance the community garden, this mural was painted. We incorporated portraits of people who lived in the neighborhood. It's important to remember art activism has been around for a long time. Here we see Pablo Picasso's Guernica, a mural painted in 1937 to shed light on the German blitzkrieg bombing of the ancient Basque town of Guernica. Guernica is an enormous mural-sized painting that was displayed to millions of visitors at the Paris World's Fair. It is a powerful indictment against war, a painting that still feels intensely relevant today, even though it was painted more than 30 years ago. While art activism has been around for a long time, what is new is the ways in which some contemporary artists approach this fascinating process. On the left, I've listed some of the strategies contemporary artists have used to promote their messages and connect a message to the viewer. I will use artists' work to illustrate how each of these strategies can produce powerful change agents. So let's begin. You see a photograph in front of you. So what I would like to do is, if you don't mind, if you can just study this photograph and just write down everything that you see. So go ahead, have at it. I'll give you like 20 seconds. This is an exercise in observation. Okay, Mark, can you read off some of the chat for me, please?
So I put down a wall of spades.
Yes.
And then we have shovels, lights, wall.
Excellent. Right. So we've got this utilitarian item, right? A number of them, shovel after shovel after shovel. It appears that it's in a exhibit space. We've got these, spotlights, the headlamps here. And so it appears to be in somewhat of an art space, right? So let's keep that in mind as we go through some of the details of this piece. What you're looking at is the photographs from an installation titled Palas de por Pistolas by Pedro Reyes, created in 2008. Translated, Palas por Pistolas means pistols into spades. This installation was initiated in the city of Quiloacuan, a city in Western Mexico, with a high rate of deaths by gunshot. The artist started a campaign for voluntary donation of weapons. Several television ads were prepared by the local TV stations, inviting citizens to give up a gun in exchange for a coupon. Those coupons could be traded in a local store in exchange for domestic appliances and electronics. So there you see the pistols the spades, the shovels, and then the trees, of course. And here's a photograph of the collected guns. Here's a picture of Pedro, the artist, with one of his creations, using gun parts to create musical instruments. Pedro Reyes has won international attention for large-scale projects that address current social and political issues. The idea was to transform the use of the material, transforming the gunmetal into the useful shovels. So he collected 1,527 weapons, melted them down, and reformed into shovels. The shovels were distributed to a number of art institutions and public schools where adults and children engaged in the planting of 1,527 trees. So a one-to-one correspondence between the weapons, the guns, and the spades. So let's go ahead and take a look. Let's see if this is actually going to work. We shall see. Do I need to do a, can you see that on your screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is just a series of photographs that were taken of this process. So collecting the guns, there's the whole pile of them. And it's asking, do you have guns in, or arms or guns in your house? The threat of the gun. This was the dates for the exhibition. So one of the process, they had to steamroll the guns to break them down. They eventually go into a huge melting pot. The metal is turned into liquid. The liquid metal gets poured into molds, and then the spades come out of the molds. There they are, starting to cool off, and they get sanded down. And there's that original photograph that you saw. The spades were also taken to schools and community centers where they could be used to plant trees. I think that's just phenomenal. Such a cool way to transform something like that. So let me just escape and we'll get back to where we came from. Okay. Super. All right, so that was one idea, that kind of idea of materials being transforming the use of the material. And here we're going to use the use of language of popular culture. So Keith Haring, he's our local boy, right? He was born in Reading. He says, art is nothing if you don't reach every segment of the people. So what I wanted you to do is take a look at this image of Haring's on the right and compare it to some of the pop culture objects on the left. And if you could in your chat, just write down some of the things that you see as a similarity. So I'll give you a few, just like, I don't know, 20 seconds to write down whatever you can see as a similarity. This is kind of helping you, really look. Okay, did we get anything in the chat there?
Yes, thick lines and attitude.
Ooh, good.
And someone else said the colors.
Excellent. Yeah, high intensity color. Objects from, your refrigerator, right? These ubiquitous logos, Adidas. And so what Keith Haring is doing is he is tapping into that because he knows that that's like accessible for people. People understand that. And there he is. So He was a popular artist and activist who was part of the legendary New York art scene during the 1980s. It was a really wild time. As an openly gay artist, Haring chose to represent the hardships of the LGBTQ community in his work. Inspired by graffiti artists, he began drawing in New York subway stations, filling empty poster spaces with chalk drawings which people would walk past every day. His aim was to make art accessible to everyone, and these works allowed him to interact with a diverse audience. Haring utilized a pop style art to reach out to the masses and shed light on the AIDS crisis. At the time, no one really wanted to talk about AIDS. It just was not what people did. In addition to the AIDS crisis, Haring also made art which addressed other socially important issues. His specially designed posters were given out at anti-nuclear power rallies and also anti-apartheid rallies. Haring's art forced people to talk about AIDS. Haring used his platform as an artist to raise awareness for AIDS. And you can see here with this poster, ignorance equals fear. He refers to the challenges that people who were living with AIDS faced. He wanted to reach as many people as possible and highlight the importance of AIDS education. Although his artworks were always colorful and animated, Haring tackled some hard-hitting and challenging subjects concerning people, not just in America, but around the world. Haring uses catchy logos to quickly and effectively make his point. One of his most famous examples is Crack is Whack mural, referring to the crack cocaine epidemic and its effect in New York City. The work was made large enough so that passing cars on the nearby roads would be able to see it. If you look carefully, you'll see down in the center, in the lower center, there's Haring himself. So Keith Haring brought awareness to social issues through his work. By combining bright colors and elements derived from popular culture, he created accessible art that carried on an important message. Although he died in 1990, Keith Haring's art activism lives on. His pop art style made his messages accessible. So we'll talk about another strategy. So that second one was the pop art. This one is juxtaposition. And juxtaposition means placing unrelated objects or ideas in close proximity to force unexpected meanings. And you all may be familiar with good old Banksy here with this image. So what I'd like you to do is take a look at this one and write down what you think this message is. So study it, look at the parts. What do you think is the message? And while you're doing that, I'm just going to talk about that last piece that we looked at, Banksy's. This is a painting of a vigil candle burning the US flag. After the death of George Floyd, the artist known as Banksy showed support for the Black Lives Matter movement by creating this image. Banksy is a great example of an art activist, using his art to make people think about injustices and stereotypes. Here's a quote by him. It says, "At first, I thought I should just shut up and listen to Black people about the issue. But why would I do that? It's not their problem, it's mine." Banksy is an anonymous English-based street artist, political activist, and film director. His works of political and social commentary have appeared on streets, walls, and bridges throughout the world. Banksy cleverly juxtaposes various elements together to create new meaning. So how do we do, Mark? What do we have for responses?
Just one, there's no place like home.
Oh, that's a good one. Excellent. I love it. So this is a work by Banksy titled Stop and Search.
Police state and harassment.
Yes, yes, good one. Excellent. Thank you. The artist juxtaposes the authority and power, this is my take, the authority and power of the police officer with the innocence and vulnerability of Dorothy and Toto from The Wizard of Oz. So it's kind of like that, you know, your assumptions, based on assumptions. Banksy has used graffiti and street art as a form of underclass, he calls it revenge, that grants an individual the ability to take the power back from the privileged. Historically, the official art was only accessible by the upper and ruling class. Banksy's work explores the ideas of war, capitalism, consumerism, and imperialism. Graffiti art allows Banksy to communicate with the common person without the trappings of a gallery or a museum environment. Here's another one by Banksy, or at least it's believed to be by Banksy, was salvaged from industrial ruins of Detroit and installed in a jail-turned art gallery. The museum shows a boy with a paintbrush and can, and next to the words, "I remember when all this was trees." The artwork's original home was on the wall of an old auto plant that's since been torn down. This piece juxtaposes a derelict urban scene with a memory of a time when nature dominated the landscape. Banksy has struck again, recently with this work titled Create Escape. Let's take a look at a video that was issued just after the appearance of this work. Let's see how we do with this one.
Hello, I'm Bob Ross. I'd like to welcome you to the joy of painting. Got all your materials out? Ready to do a fantastic painting with me? Good. So I tell you what, let's just take off and have some fun today. I thought we'd just do a very warm little scene that makes you feel good in here. Hey, I gotta make a big decision here. Maybe he lives right here. Put a little shadow right underneath there. Darker, darker, darker down here. No pressure. If you like to use pattern, trace your pattern on here. A little bit of white to that. I want to lighten it just a little. Oh, that's much better. Easy. Caress it very lightly. All right, we're in business again here. Change the shape of this a little bit so it has a little more character to it. You can do that. That's a nice color. There. A little back in here, just like so. Oh, that's perfect. Perfect. This is really a fun little painting. It should give you a lot of ideas for a lot of crazy things that you can do. Okay, just right on down, but think about shape and form and how you want the limbs to look. Also is a nice light area between the darks. It separates, makes everything really stand out and look good. Let's go right up in here. Maybe we'll have a little water in here. I love water. I just want to flavor this a little. Barely touch it. Barely touch it. All right. The paints that we use are specifically designed for this technique of painting. There we go. A little back in here. Maybe a little ripple here and there and there and here. That's all there is to it. There. Something like so. Painting, to me, represents freedom. I can create the kind of world that I want to see, that I want to be part of. Look at that. Isn't he a cute little rascal? Big son of a gun. He just goes all the way off the canvas. We just want to show you a technique and turn you loose on the world. Just absolutely turn you loose on the world. That really is the fun part of this whole technique. So from all of us here, I'd like to wish you happy painting, and God bless, my friend.
So hope you enjoyed that one. Let me get back on here. And let's see, we get lost. Just a minute. I always knew that the embedding these videos would be a little tricky, but we will persevere. Let's just try this again. I've lost my PowerPoint. All right. It doesn't want to go into presentation mode. Interesting. Okay. I will do that one more time. And we'll leave it at that. Okay. So what you saw there was no, it doesn't want to do it. Okay. One more shot. How we doing, Mark? Can you see the presentation?
Not yet, no.
Okay. Give me just one more shot at it. It looks like it won't go into presentation mode, but that's okay. So here we have, this work was located on the wall of a defunct prison in Reading, Berkshire, England. And it shows an image of Oscar Wilde, the writer, in the middle of an escape. He's using a roll of typing paper instead of a bed sheet to help him over the wall. Oscar Wilde, a prominent British writer in the late 1800s. He was a prisoner for 2 years for what was called gross indecency with other men. Banksy, in his clever way, uses juxtaposition to jar us out of our sense of complacency and challenge us with our cultural assumptions. And not only that, but he juxtaposes, of course, our wonderful Bob Ross and his own work. I thought that was really interesting. So we're going to take a look at another. There's a group and that focuses on the power of text. So another strategy of art activists is the use of text in their artwork. And here you have the Guerrilla Girls, an art activist group that started in 1985, and they still exist today. They use anonymity and the power of text to convey meaning. So here's one of their images. And there you can see, do women have to be naked to get into the Met Museum? So what they're doing is they're confronting you with data. You can see that 5% of artists in the Museum of Modern Art are women, whereas 85% of the nudes represented in paintings are female. So they work together to kind of shake things up. They choose to wear gorilla masks as a protest and as a play on words. Guerrilla warfare, right? They depend on stealth and anonymity to be used as an advantage. So here's a quote by The Guardian in 2016. The Guerrilla Girls protests were data-driven before data became a thing. And over the years, they have broadened their remit to encompass iniquities in Hollywood and the theater. What they hope ultimately is that their work suggests an alternative to the way things are currently done. So there you can see that, they're tallying up the number of women one-person shows in New York City. You can see 1985. You can see that there is some improvement, but it's taken us 30 years to get there. Another image by the Guerrilla Girls that exposes the hypocrisy between best intentions and act. So they're always up to something very clever. The Guerrilla Girls scope is not only centered on raising awareness of challenges that exist for women artists, but the challenges for all females. Here we see in this graphic the disparity between how much women make versus a man. So let's go ahead and take just a little bit of a break and listen to what the Girly Girls have to say.
If someone had said to me 30 years ago, you'd still be doing this, I would have told them they were absolutely crazy.
I've just been doing it for so long. Sometimes I forget I have a mask on.
We're a bunch of anonymous women artists who started complaining about the art world in 1985, and we did it with posters on the streets of New York. We take the names of dead women artists to keep their memories alive.
Their identities are secret, but their message is clear: end inequality in the art world. Why does gender parity matter?
Culture is the story of everyone. And how can you really tell the story of a culture when you don't include all the voices within the culture? Otherwise, it's just the history and the story of power.
I feel like you've answered that question before.
Okay, so there you had an idea of how text can be very powerful as an agent for change. And so the next artist I'd like to talk about also uses text in her work, and her name is Barbara Kruger. She's a contemporary artist who works in New York, also uses text to create meaning in an attempt to challenge the status quo. She was born in 1945 in Newark, New Jersey. Her parents were of the working class. After attending Syracuse University's School of Visual Arts, she obtained a design job at Condé Nast Publications. Kruger challenges the viewer with contrasting colors and bold text. There you can see your body is a battleground. So Art 21, which is a really fantastic series of films and short clips, describes her work through this quote: much of her text questions the viewer about feminism, classicism, consumerism, and individual autonomy and desire. Although her black and white images are culled from the mainstream magazines, they sell the very ideas she is disputing. Kruger challenges us by contrasting innocuous imagery with statements revolving around the treatment of women. Kruger also uses text to ask questions about who is in power and who is disenfranchised. So let's hear from Barbara Kruger.
There was a very visible wall on the side of this building, and it was an opportunity to make a statement about pride and prominence and power and control. There was on the side of this building, and it was an opportunity to make a statement about pride and prominence and power and control and fear. The questions were always the important part of the work to me. The questions were always about values and control and power and who laughs last and who dies first. These were always the prominent concern for me. One would hope that in the 30 years since, things would have changed a bit. And things have changed for the good and for the bad and for everything in between.
She's always asking those very important questions. I really enjoy her thought process. She always is sort of, jogging us out of our sense of complacency with her questions. So we're going to move on to the next artist. This is Carol Walker, and she one of the other things that we can think about in terms of these strategies that I've been, the juxtaposition, the use of materials, this is layering. And layering is the placing of images, placing of imagery or materials on top of other images and materials to create a visually complex appearance. So what you're looking at is a work of art by an artist, Carol Walker, and this is titled Darkytown Rebellion, 2001. So what you're seeing is obviously the gallery, and you can see these are cut out. These are paper cutout silhouettes. And she uses, she projects light so that when you have a person who enters the gallery, your shadow, your cast shadow is sort of part of the implications of her subject. So Kara was born in 1969. She's an African-American artist who explores race, gender, sexuality, violence, and identity in her work. She is best known for her room-sized tableaus of Black cut paper silhouettes. So here it goes back to Darkytown Rebellion, shows a brilliant pattern of color washes over a wall full of silhouettes, enacting a dramatic rebellion, giving the viewer the unforgettable experience of stepping into a work of art. Walker's talent is not about creating controversy for its own sake, but building a world that unleashes horrors even as it seduces viewers. Walker uses overhead projectors to throw lights on the wall and cast shadows, and we as the participants in that. Another work is a work that is titled Slavery, Slavery, exclamation point. Here we see historical caricatures of African Americans. They address the ways that stereotypes shape cultural perceptions of this community. The figures you see here were adapted from that previous artwork, the images we saw previously. Walker explores whether these stereotypes still are relevant for the 21st century. The result is an ambiguous mix of history and fiction as Walker creates an inventive narrative which invites us to reflect on issues of race and racism. Notice how each silhouette both reveals and conceals. Without the interior detail, the viewer can lose the information needed to determine gender, gauge the specific violence that has occurred. So here's the complete image of slavery, slavery. And what we're going to do is we are going to hear from Kara, and let's just see if we can get her going here. Can you see the video?
No.
No.
A lot of my work has been
Okay, just
about
1 second, I'll get it. Huh.
the unexpected, kind of wanting to be the heroine and yet wanting to kill the heroine at the same time. And that kind of dilemma, that push and pull, is the underlying turbulence that I bring to each of the pieces that I make. The silhouette lends itself to, avoidance of the subject, not being able to look at it directly.
So there you could see a little bit of her her process there. So let's go ahead and go back to the PowerPoint. All righty, here we go. So I'm gonna introduce you to another artist, and the next one is going to be Ai Weiwei. Another strategy here is recontextualization. So that's changing the context, the understood or accepted meaning of an object, image, or idea by removing it from its original setting and placing it into a new setting. So Ai Weiwei is one of the most famous protest artists today. His work is deeply political and critical of China's Communist Party. He's been arrested and imprisoned by the Chinese government. Even after he was released, Chinese authorities retained his passport and forbid him from leaving Beijing, placing him on a modified house arrest for 4 years. A quote by him, let me just move this out of the way. A quote by him here. is, I believe the core value of an artist must be to express yourself freely and fight for the freedom of others. So we have a couple of projects that he's been involved with. These are two of his most recent ones. Here's an exhibit at Qatar, and here Ai Weiwei, who was once a refugee himself, filled the exhibition space with meticulously arranged garments, shoes, and personal effects that he acquired from refugee camps housing Syrian immigrants at the town of Idomeni, near the border of Greece. Here we see hundreds of shoes and boots that were abandoned by refugees when they were required to relocate to a new camp. Through the exhibition, Ai Weiwei directs the spotlight on the deplorable plight of refugees worldwide. When the Idomeni camp was shut down in May 2016, thousands of refugees were displaced. Ai Weiwei and his team reverently collected, washed, and organized the possessions that were haphazardly left behind in an effort to preserve their tumultuous experience. Another installation by Ai Weiwei, this is 2016, he attached 14,000 life jackets used by refugees to the columns of Berlin's Konzerthaus, which is a concert hall in Berlin. The orange vests were collected by the artist on his frequent trips to the Greek island of Lesbos, where hundreds of refugees landed after completing the treacherous sea journey from Turkey. The artist sought to use the installation to bring attention to the plight of these refugees, something he had done before in previous artworks. It was a piece that transformed the meaning of a seemingly simple object, the life jackets, into something powerful and used volume and scale to impact the viewer. When Ai Weiwei takes objects out of their original context and recontextualizes their environment, he's challenging the viewer's assumptions and cultural biases. So here's a news report directly from Berlin, the news reporters right in front of the installation. So let's hear what she has to say.
Now, this is the latest installation from Chinese artist Ai Weiwei. 14,000 life jackets used by refugees to make that dangerous journey.
And the volume is very low.
Yeah, everybody will probably just have to pump up their volume a little bit.
With the words #safe passage. The message here is very clear, calling attention to the plight of refugees. Over the last year, more than 1 million have entered Europe. And since January, more than 400 have died trying to make the journey. That's according to the International Organization for Migration. Now, all of this has been installed just in time for the Berlinale Film Festival, as well as the Cinema for Peace Gala, which will be happening inside the concert hall here in Berlin. So as A-listers walk the red carpet, they'll also be walking past those life jackets, a stark reminder that thousands are still risking their lives to find safe haven in Europe every day. Atika Schubert, CNN, Berlin.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that was Ai Weiwei. And we've got one other artist to take a look at. This one is really interesting. This is known as Border Tuner. And this is an example of how artists today use technology through their art activism. So Border Tuner is an interactive public art installation across the US-Mexico border. It's by an artist whose name is Rafael Lozano Hemmer. So what he's done is he has set up 3 interactive stations on each side of the border that controls powerful searchlight beams using a small dial wheel. When lights from any 2 stations are directed at each other, microphones and speakers automatically switch on to allow participants to talk with one another, creating a cross-border conversation. The installation consists of bright searchlights that beam across the sky from Juarez, Mexico to El Paso, Texas, and then vice versa. These powerful lights connect people on both sides of the border between Mexico and US. Along with the lights are microphones and speakers. As the searchlights intersect, that enables the communication to take place. This interactive art installation allows participants to make new connections across the border and demonstrate their relationship between these two cities. El Paso and Juarez make up the largest binational metropolitan area in the Western Hemisphere. Let's see how the interaction installation works. So let's go ahead and see. This is, I'll have to pick it out. I'm gonna have to do a new share here. And let's just see if we can do this. Can you see the video?
Yeah.
So that's my heartbeat. It's going quite fast. And then let's hope that somebody in Mexico comes and tries it out. I'm all alone. I wonder, oh, someone's there. Someone's just touching the sensor, and that's their heartbeat. And I can feel it with my hands. It's so weird. And now I'm going to release. And now only the Mexican heartbeat stays on. Somebody's still holding it. Put my hands again. And now they're both on. Oh. Amazing.
Isn't that the best? So I'm gonna go ahead and stop that. And we'll go ahead and finish up. All righty, here we go. So the last couple of slides. Just show you this one here. So we kind of went through this list of these strategies, you know, some of the different artists that exemplify these strategies. Obviously, they're probably using more than just one that I demonstrated. So we have this wonderful quote from Tim McCarthy: some form of art, literature. He's defining protest art or music that offers some kind of critique or something wrong in the culture, something troubling to the artist or writer, and often that seeks explicitly or implicitly to offer a solution. And I think that's really kind of, for me, the wonderful part about this art activism, that we're not only just raising awareness or highlighting, you know, problems, but that, you know, ultimately, you know, there's a solution. So that to me is a very hopeful sign. So it's encouraging to know that there are many art activists out there at work, even today, using their art to challenge present systems that are unjust and imbalanced. And I just want to end with this quote, which has always been such an amazing sort of galvanizer for me. I often am reminded this quote by Margaret Mead: may we be emboldened to use our art as a vehicle for positive change. And if we feel we're not able to make art, hopefully we can support someone who does. So thanks so much for your time. And I really invite questions or thoughts or observations. What did you think? Were you familiar with some of these artists, or was this sort of brand new for you?
I can say it was pretty much brand new for me, although I've heard some of the artists' names before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard some of these artists' names before as well. It's good to get like a refresher on some of them that I haven't heard of in a while. I mean, like everyone's heard of Keith Haring and Banksy, so like it's good to, like, I feel like to even juxtapose like these really well-known names with people I'm not as familiar with just because they're not in my sphere.
Yes, yes. And I also think it's wonderful that you all are, for most of you, I mean, it's probably a self-selected group, but I also just I'm so happy that, you know, you understand it as art, because sometimes people say, well, that's not art, you know, and maybe we're getting over that hump that, just because it's not a painting on canvas, it's okay. I love that idea that, the general, thought is that art can be just a lot of different mediums, a lot of different approaches. And for me, that's what's so much fun about art, is because you can't really, you can't hold it down.
Yeah.
Okay. Ellen, I'm surprised. Well, I was hopeful about the rifles in Mexico.
Yes.
That I would imagine that the artist said, give up your guns. I'm going to make something beautiful. I mean, there had to be some trade-off, and it was wonderful to see that.
Yes. Yeah.
The spades and the shovels.
Yeah, absolutely. And the trick is to try to figure out, how to, the logistics of it, to how to get, how do you get that movement going? And I liked how he utilized the TV stations and the ads. And then, of course, a little bit of an incentive, these coupons, which could be, traded for appliances or, groceries or whatever. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
Philadelphia can learn something from that, or should learn something from that, with all the gun violence that's going on.
Yes, absolutely. And like I said at one point in the talk, this idea of like creative problem solving, I think is really what it's all about. I mean, if any year has taught us, like, there's problems, there's definite problems out there. And maybe we can put our heads together and do some creative problem solving. I think that is really kind of hopeful too. We need a lot of hope, a lot of hope, a lot of faith. Oh boy, wow. Well, thank you all for joining. I think I don't know if you got the tail end. Just don't hesitate to email me if you ever want to. If you have a question, or if you just want to engage in a conversation, I'm always up for some kind of art conversation.
It was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for doing it.
Oh, thanks.
Yes,
It's always a pleasure.
yes.
Hopefully we'll see you again.
Yes, I
In
even
person,
think
yes.
the
One
art signs Black Lives Matter. I mean, I think it's
Yes.
something that people can look at and get it.
Yes.
I mean, it's there in black and white, but I think this is the new form now, the catchy
Yes.
slogan, the artwork.
Sometimes you really do have to hit people over the head to get the message, for them to get the message. So.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and you can do it, in a non-violent way with
Right.
art. That's
Right,
the beauty
through
of
art,
it.
right.
And they get
That's
it.
hope.
They get it.
Right.
You really have to sometimes get really really powerful for, obvious for
Yeah.
them to get it, but we'll get it. We'll learn slowly. It's a slow learning process here.
Yes, it's wonderful. Thank you so much,
Thanks so
Martha.
much. You all have a
Thank you.
wonderful night, and I look
Yes.
forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ellen, and take care,
Thanks.
everybody. Good night now.
Good night.
Good night.